the meeting, and it's kind of
Yep.
slowly doing
Yep.
that.
So we're about to go live on your YouTube right now.
Okay. Alrighty then. Welcome back, everybody. Crypto Hulk. I am going to have to minimize the screen here. We are with Caleb and Brown. We're going to go over like what we do every 2 weeks. We're going to have an open show and we're going to have question answers. A lot of stuff's been happening in crypto in the past since our last meeting with Caleb and Brown. There's been like a lot of stuff that's been happening, and I wanted to kind of go over this. Um, I'm seeing institutions jumping into cryptocurrency, and it's very interesting. We've got BlackRock, just the top companies today. JP Morgan jumping into crypto, and I want to kind of get an idea from Caleb and Brown. Like, what are you guys seeing? I know we'll have some question answer period. But today's show, I want to kind of start off with the big picture and what does Caleb and Brown see as far as tokenization? Because I'm reading off articles here. Um, there's just like the biggest, you got Ripple buying Hidden Road, which is like a brokerage. And then you've got just BlackRock doing this. The biggest companies in the world, nobody wanted to be first except like BlackRock. Now that BlackRock's in, a couple other giants come in. And now it's like, but nobody wants to be last. That's what I'm seeing. Jim, like in the world of trading and crypto and institutions and stuff, obviously without mentioning any names, what are you seeing going on your end with institutions?
Oh, on our end, we're seeing more and more adoption as this space becomes more mature. And I think the biggest thing is that, especially in the US, we've got a pro crypto administration now, right? So administrations and institutions, even tech platforms. So we're looking at, even Meta's looking to potentially issue stablecoin functionality within Facebook and WhatsApp. We're starting to see more and more of the largest tech institutions adopt crypto, become more interested in it, because they know that this is where the world is going. This is where government support is now flowing in. So certainly, BlackRock, there have been a few pioneers that have led the way in terms of crypto investment when it comes to institutions. But from our side, we're seeing just more and more adoption every day, both from the retail side. So if we think about a lot of retail investors, they're not that eager to jump into crypto until they see some of these larger, more legitimate institutions find their feet in this space as well. So from a retail level, we're seeing more and more adoption, but certainly at an institutional level, as I mentioned, Meta, we're seeing it at a government level as well. So New Hampshire and Arizona just enacted their own strategic Bitcoin reserves. So we're seeing it on all levels where there's more and more adoption coming through, which is really beneficial for the space, right? There's more interest in what we're doing. It means that there'll be more exposure to new assets, new use cases. Hopefully, it means there's a bit of a supply crunch on some of the assets we've invested in as well. But ultimately, it's all really positive. We've still got a ways to go, especially at a government level when it comes to regulation. But yeah, institutions are flowing in right now. It also helps with the ETF exposure that they can actually invest through, a traditional finance means.
So on your end, um, a year ago, 3 years ago, you would probably see a lot of speculative investment stuff with like smaller investors maybe, but now are you seeing just like big investment firms coming in and kind of squashing any kind of speculative little investments, or no? Like, what are you seeing as far as speculation? Are you seeing less speculation now or more like real world buying, like big purchases, and they're not flipping it? Or I don't know, because I don't know your side of the business.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I would say we're still quite retail heavy in terms of our client base. So we very much look after, more on the retail business to consumer side. Now, we certainly still have some institutions that work with us. We have a lot of those retail investors that, are high net worth that are investing through their various LLCs or trusts. But in terms of the speculative nature of things, I think it just depends on the time in the market. Obviously, we're seeing more and more adoption with things like meme coins. Meme coins have become incredibly popular. Now, there's no utility behind them, right? So that's pure speculation. Those have cooled off a little bit from the all-time highs that we saw in November last year. But certainly more and more people are, look, if they're going to invest at size into this asset class, they want to invest in things that have a clear utility, clearly are building towards something that has functionality in the economy moving forward. So I think long term we'll see more and more of that, and we are starting to see more of that maturity. But we still have a lot of people that like to speculate on meme coins and what have you. So it really just comes down to the investor and what their preferences are, really.
Okay, I got into crypto about 5 years ago. Um, from what I've seen, I haven't really seen like a lot of real world use case, or I haven't seen big investment firms like BlackRock coming in, Apollo. I'm seeing these big firms coming in, starting tokenization. Like I said, JP Morgan just started. Let me look at one of my articles here. You got JP Morgan came into like Singapore and just started tokenization. Here it goes. Let me take a look. JP Morgan settles the first tokenized treasury transaction on public blockchain using Chainlink Crypto and Ondo Finance. So it looks like JP Morgan settled its first transaction on a public blockchain this week. I'm like, what? This is like,
Crazy.
wow. JP Morgan, I don't know if you're aware of it, but from the news that I read, JP Morgan is the world's most systemically important bank. Okay. Like if they were to fail, it would literally cause a really big problem in the entire world.
Yeah, I think every single bank out there, even if they're not admitting it publicly, when it comes to documentation, they're certainly exploring how to use the blockchain to better improve their operations. They would be quite negligent on their behalf to not at least be exploring this asset class and trying different use cases like Ondo. We know that XRP is trying to enter into that space when it comes to cross-border transactions. Banks need to be aware of what's happening in the use cases within everything blockchain related, because if they don't, they'll be left behind. So yeah, JP Morgan I think they were doing a lot around CBDC tokens as well. They were one of the first to actually do sort of an international transaction via sort of their own blockchain they set up. So we're starting to see more and more innovation, at least trialing from these big institutions, which is great because banks have been inherently anti-crypto. We've experienced that as a business, right? They often really don't like working with crypto companies. They think a lot of them are scams. So we're slowly starting to shift away from that sentiment, which is great for us. It's great for everyone looking to on-ramp. But yeah, imagine all the stuff that's happening behind the scenes that isn't currently being made public. Like I am certain there's a lot of experimentation going on currently. So it's going to be interesting to see how that progresses over the next few years.
Yeah, in this article here, it says the transaction comes roughly 6 years after the financial titan debuted its decentralized platform, JPM Coin. So back
Mm.
6 years ago, JP Morgan released a platform, a decentralized platform. They had the JPM Coin. Now, I think they changed the name to Connexus or something like that, and they're doing some other things. But when I read this one today, I'm like, oh my God. So it's BlackRock gets in there and does their thing, and then some others. And now JP Morgan's come in. But JP Morgan's using Chainlink and Ondo to do this. Chainlink's a Ripple partner. And I don't know if you follow, but Ondo works with BlackRock, right? And Ondo is Ethereum based, but Ondo uses Axelar, which is a crypto you guys sell, which I started to buy, because Axelar is a Ripple partner. So in a way, BlackRock is utilizing Ripple technology to get this stuff done.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting what we're trying to say. And another really interesting thing is a lot of the ETF adoptions now, with people starting to think, okay, what's going to be the next ETF? We've had Ethereum come through, we've had Bitcoin, which again gets back to that point around institutions feeling more comfortable to invest in crypto through these ETFs. And the biggest rumor going around is that, look, Ripple's probably up there in terms of the next one. Some people think a Solana ETF may be likely, but Ripple's making a lot of moves in this space. We spoke a few weeks ago about how they're trying to acquire Circle. So they've been quite aggressive with everything they're doing. I saw that we're meeting in the Middle East and seeing whether they can get funding and use cases there as well. So it's certainly a watch on what they're doing. Where we obviously have a lot of clients that are big believers in Ripple Lab and are invested in not only the XRP but a lot of the ISO tokens. So they're taking an aggressive approach when it comes to getting themselves out there and into the crypto ecosystem. So they're definitely a watch for the rest of this year and onwards.
Do you invest in crypto?
In my like a personal capacity.
Yeah, like I know you work for a crypto broker. So how is that like, well, I don't want to talk about your work policy. Are you allowed to answer the question? If I were to ask you personally, do you have your own little personal crypto account or like, yeah, are you going to get in trouble buying crypto? How does that work?
Yeah, so I invest in crypto. I have since 2017. I think you'd find every single person at Calvin Brown invests in crypto. We're all super passionate about it. We're quite obsessed with the space. It's just the nature of what we do. So yeah, I can reveal that. I can't. I'm not allowed to reveal what I'm actually invested in, unfortunately.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, where you won't find a single person at Calvin Brown that doesn't have their own personal investments in crypto, just because we're all super passionate about the space. So yeah.
Okay. I think somebody had a question. Okay, Zoe. Why don't they support IOTA?
So we allow for the buying of IOTA. Either the buying or selling of IOTA, but not one or the other. The main reason is just from a liquidity perspective. We've found it's difficult to actually source meaningfully and at scale. So we allow the option. I need to check what the designation is. Sometimes we allow clients to buy through us but not sell through us. Sometimes it's the other way around. It's really to do from a liquidity perspective. So at this stage, we often have some tokens that aren't fully listed with us, but are listed in a limited capacity. So you can either deposit with us and we can store it for you in custody, but you won't be able to buy or sell through us. I'm not sure in IOTA's example which way it is, but really it's to do from a liquidity perspective. But please rest assured, Zoe, we're always looking at, look, is there an optionality for us to increase our limitations when it comes to offering the full scope of buying, selling, swapping, storing? There are just some assets where we require further either just liquidity, further assurances around their custody solutions that will allow us to actually offer it at a full capacity. So at this stage, I'm not sure what the limitations are on it currently. I know that we offer it just in a limited capacity, but again, something we're always looking into. Hopefully, we'll be able to list it fully in the future.
So let me okay, so usually every first of the month, Crypto Hulk gets a crypto allowance. I tell my fans I get my allowance and I'm charging after crypto. I'm rich on Monday and broke on Tuesday with money to buy crypto. But I just because I wait for the whole month and I watch and I read the news to my followers. So by the first of the month, I've been watching for 30 days and then I boom, go in, I just buy, and then I'm broke in like 1 to 2 days. If I were to choose IOTA for one of my next purchases at Caleb Brown, like will it allow me to buy it?
Again, I need to double check on whether it's a buy or a sell. Maybe I
Oh,
can have a look right now while we're going, and I can get back to that question. But it would be one of those ones where you could potentially buy it through us, but then you would have to either off ramp it to one of your wallets, or it may be one where you could sell it through us, but we wouldn't be able to buy it through us. So I need to double check. As I mentioned, there are a few assets like these where because there's limited liquidity, we only really allow for one side of the transaction. Let me get it up now and I can confirm that. And I can come back to that question if you'd like.
sure. Let me take a look at some questions here, see what people have been asking. Give me everybody let me see what we got here. Seal coin. Okay. There's something called seal coin. And okay, you probably don't have this because it's like going to be brand new. And okay, there's a company called Seals Q. And
Mhm.
Seals Q is working with YSAT and they're working with SpaceX. They're working with HBAR too. And what they're doing now, Seals Q is an actual real company. The crypto, obviously, is HBAR, and they're working together. Well, Seals Q said they're going to come out with a crypto called Seal Coin. And I was wondering if you could put that on any of your trackers, and later on, maybe after the show or tomorrow or the next day or something, look up Seal Coin. It's coming out, or if you have somebody at your business there that can look this up, because this is a very legitimate project in my opinion. It's not a dog coin or a peppy, and I think this would be a massive opportunity. Yeah, we're not really buying peppy over here lately, and but a lot of people are. I mean, I'm reading articles where Seals Q is telling us they're coming out with something called Seal Coin, and I'm telling you what, like, whew, we want that thing bad, but. If you guys could look into it and maybe update me, and I'll tell everybody because people are wanting to know if we can get this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember we spoke about this, wouldn't have been last live stream, but probably a few before that. So we've done some checks on it, and I've seen the articles that have been written about it. It just hasn't gone live yet. So
Okay.
we're looking into when that will feasibly be. But when it does go live, we'll do the relevant due diligence to see if we can list it. Ultimately, if it has a lot of liquidity in the market, if there's demand from people in the whole community, that helps with us being able to list something like that because we have confidence that we'll be able to execute the trades on behalf of clients. So yeah, I've got that one noted down. I know that that's come up a few times in this chat. So we've got that sort of ready to go. We'll wait to see once it goes live, and then we'll do our checks on it. Just going back to IOTA, I just had a look. So right now on our platform, you can only sell it and withdraw it with us. So we only allow it as an off-ramp capability. And that's purely, as I mentioned, from a liquidity perspective. So unfortunately, we don't allow clients to buy it or deposit it through us. So really, if you hold IOTA and you want to sell it through us, we can do that and facilitate that transaction and get you the best price for it. Right now, there's just not enough meaningful liquidity in the market for us to adequately buy it for clients at scale. And as you can imagine, we've got a lot of clients that want to buy it, but we don't want to essentially give them an opportunity to buy it, but at a far worse rate than what they would get somewhere else. So we know it's in high demand. We're always looking at different liquidity providers to see who can list it. But again, I think it's the very nature of the token itself that it's hard to actually get enough of it to be able to allow clients to buy it at scale.
Okay, interesting. Let's see. I'm going to look for questions here. Bill Quackenbush, thank you very much for that donation. Allbridge isn't listed on Caleb and Brown. Yeah, Allbridge is working with Stellar and something called Ultra Stellar. Allbridge is a crypto that acts as a bridge, kind of like an Axelar. Ripple has something called Axelar they're working with. Stellar has something called Allbridge. And if you could put that on your tracker, how is that looking? I don't know if you have access to look it up like right now, or you've got to write that down and get back to me on. But Allbridge, Allbridge. It works with Stellar to act as a bridge for Ethereum, Polygon, CeeLo, and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, is the ticker ABR? I'm looking at it right now, I think.
oh,
Um, yeah, so I mean, again, this is another one. It's not like it's an automatic. You put in the ticker and then it tells you whether we can list it or not. It's really something that we do with our operations team, manually with our people. So we'll actually go through a really thorough review process, see who's behind the team, see how much liquidity is in the market for it, what is its use case, how likely is it to continue to hold its value over a long period of time. So Allbridge is another. I'll note it down after this call, and we'll go through those reviews, internally and see whether we can list it. I think the biggest thing with us is that, look, we'll always go through that process to see whether we can list something. So if there's always assets that this community is interested in, please let me know, whether you ask through Hulk or you can contact me personally, and we'll go through the process of seeing whether we can list it. Ultimately, we're only going to list things that aren't going to rug our clients. That's probably like the number one thing, right? So while it may be interesting now, we still want it to be feasible for us to be able to allow clients to enter and exit the market without feeling like they're being gouged on, ridiculous price movements one way or the other. So I've written that one down as well, and I'll have a look into that.
Okay, a lot of the crypto hawk people, including myself and stuff, look, sometimes we get excited and we want to get into a crypto and oh yeah, we gotta have it. And then when it dumps, what's the first thing we do? Oh man, Caleb Brown lost all my money. Those bastards. Da, 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 da. So it's kind of like what Caleb and Brown does is they look, me and you, we're investors. Everybody watching my show, like we're investors and stuff. Okay, we watch Crypto Hulk, we want to hear news and stuff, and then the people who watch my show either invest or don't invest, depending on the news that I bring up and stuff. And sometimes it's like, hey, you may really, really want something, but then you got people on the other end at the brokerage, and they're supposed to be responsible and do due diligence, and they are the ones that sell or purchase crypto. And it's kind of like they've got to have a certain process, and because their reputation's on the line. So just because you want to buy it, it might not be good to buy because they look at different metrics than we do. I'm showing you news articles and you guys get excited, and maybe it's something we shouldn't buy or should. So that's why just sometimes we have to wait. Whatever Caleb, Caleb Brown's only going to buy certain things, and they have a list of criteria, and different cryptos have to meet certain guidelines or they're not buying it no matter how much you want it, because the minute that it dumps, oh, Caleb Brown rug pulled me, well, and then you go on all social media and start talking dumb shit like that. So that's why they're not just going to buy anything that we want. So let me look for a question. Chauncey, wait a second here. We got the Zoe one with IOTA. Okay. Quackenbush. Chauncey. Somebody by the name of Chauncey. Caleb Brown question. Once I've established my account with Caleb Brown, can I take multiple positions with one $500 trade?
So the short answer is no, unfortunately. It's a minimum trade of 500 USD based on per asset. So if you're someone that's new to CMB and you want to at least try a few trades first, it's no harm in asking your broker. But usually our trade minimum size is 500 USD, and that's simply because anything below that, the business is actually taken a profit, taken a loss on that. So that is usually our trade minimum. Again, if you wanted to DCA, that's a little lower. So I think that's a minimum of 50 US dollars, I believe. But again, obviously that's over a longer period of time. So unfortunately, the 500 USD minimum is based on a per trade, per asset basis.
Uh, Danny, Outer City. We'll call his name Danny. Um, will there be an option to use debit card to deposit in the future? I don't like using Coinbase, MoonPay, or other platforms to buy my crypto.
Yeah, it's a great question. It is definitely something that we're looking into providing that extra functionality for our clients. We know that especially US clients are used to paying with everything through debit or credit cards, and aren't too familiar when it comes to bank wire transfers. The only concern for us, or at least the thing that we need to be aware of, and the clients will then need to be aware of, is that if you're going to use I think a debit card would be fine, but let's just say you're using a credit card, there's obviously fees associated with that. So if you're doing a transfer of deposit, of fiat into your Calvin Brown account, that will incur some fees at the credit card level as well. So at this stage, it's just bank wire transfers, but we know that our clients want to use us as an off ramp capability and on ramp capability with their debit and credit cards. So it is something we're looking into, but just unfortunately at this stage, if you want to on ramp with us, it's just through bank wire transfers.
I want to bring up something very, very important. Certain people, we're going to talk about safety and security next. Something very, very big happened to a crypto exchange. I'll say the first half of the name is Coin, but I won't say the last name, which is Base. Now, we've got Jim working for an exchange or a brokerage, so we're not going to mention names. Well, he can't mention names. I can mention anything, but I'm going to try to keep it halfway professional. Um, I'm loving this. This is why I got Caleb and Brown, because there's a certain crypto exchange and they got majorly hacked. I'm like, oh my God. Okay. Attackers stole data, including names, addresses, emails, but they didn't get passwords or none of this stuff. I've also told they have portions of social security numbers, government ID, on and on. I'm going to tell you what I'm adding into this. They probably had the amount of crypto that you have. So if you got $100 million worth of crypto, they got your address, your phone number, they can read in emails, and I'm like, oh my God, dear God in heaven. Okay, Jim, how many times the whole time Caleb Brown's been in business, how many times has the crypto in your custody been actually hacked?
Oh, zero, zero.
Zero.
We've never had issues with hackings and things of that nature when it comes to our custody for clients. Risk and custody is everything that we do. I can chat on this a bit more openly because it is just public information, right? So I saw that video that Brian Armstrong put out last night. Um, what I would say is that so everyone that works in our support team, so it was a social, and what they did was essentially bribed support workers that were offshore, that worked at Coinbase but were offshore workers, and essentially said, "Hey, we'll pay you X amount of dollars if you provide us with this personal information around Coinbase clients." What I would say about our team is that look, we don't have any offshore support team workers. Everyone that works at Calvin Brown either works in our Australian office or our US office. So all of our support staff are based here. So we're pretty confident in the security protocols that we have in place around the data that they work with, and the privacy that we really uphold for all of our client details. So it is a little worrying when we see things like that, especially, look, I'm a huge fan of Coinbase. It was my first ever exchange I used. I'm a big fan of Brian Armstrong. But for such a profitable business, I think they did. I can't remember what the profit metrics were. It is a bit wild that they're still using offshore support workers, considering how much profit they generate each quarter. But look, these things do happen. But what I would say to everyone on this call that's listening is that, look, we don't have any offshore workers. We do everything either in Australia or the US. And everyone in our support team has the relevant privacy protocols in place to ensure that customer details are never compromised.
Okay, this is important. I'm going to focus on this a little because this is why Crypto Hulk is with Caleb Brown. Crypto Hulk, look, I used to do investigative type work. I was never an investigator, but I've worked at the United States Department of Justice. I've worked at the state level Supreme Court. Um, I've worked in law enforcement quite a bit, probation, like rehabilitation, but in a law enforcement atmosphere. I worked for mental health stuff, but let's get back to the government type stuff. It's like I got my crypto. I never bought more crypto because I was afraid of hacks or whatever. And I like the Caleb and Brown aspect because you're using Fireblocks, and that's like
Mhm.
1,800 global banks and institutions trust Fireblocks. And that's what Caleb Brown has. I like the safety and security that he was just saying. They've never had a hack incident. Now, there's a certain crypto exchange that's probably generating billions of dollars. They've got part of their safety and security in some warehouse office sweatshop. I mean, who knows? And if you have a problem, you can't call them up. I know if there's a problem, I get a suspicious email or I get a weird call with somebody trying to take my money. I'm on the phone, especially if it's Australian hours. I'm calling the phone and I know I'm going to talk to somebody at Caleb Brown. I'm going to send an email uh, when Caleb Brown is closed. My broker's email is open 24/7. Caleb Brown has people to stop this kind of dumb shit from happening. So something happens. My broker's at home asleep. Um, Caleb Brown is shut down because they're on the other side of the world from the United States. Something bad happens or suspicious. I email my broker and say, hey, did Caleb Brown just ask me for my password or something like that, and I got a broker within 2 to 5 minutes, generally, is probably going to respond right away. Crypto Hulk, that's not us. That's what I'm talking about. Now, does a particular crypto exchange have that process? No. There is no support, there's no nothing, and your information gets carried away. That's why I'm with Caleb and Brown. So let me check some other questions here. Chris in New Jersey, can you ask him if Onyx, Onyx, crypto, which is XCN, is connected to Chase?
I don't know too much about whether it's connected to Chase. I know XCN, I know the asset, but I'm not. I don't actually know too much about whether it has connections to, be trade by institutions like Chase. I'm not sure if you know much more about the matter, but I'll probably have to go back and get back to you on that one.
Geo says Caleb and Brown is awesome. My bank won't let me send money to the channel. I'm just kind of going through little questions here. Let me see. Okay, here's a common question we get by Tim Jones. Tim Jones says, hypothetically, if Caleb and Brown shuts their doors, what would happen to your crypto?
So, if our business decided to no longer operate or shut their doors, as Tim mentioned, the first thing that we would be legally required to do as a business is to return all client funds to their requisite holders and owners. So if something was to happen to us, the first thing that we would do is essentially contact every single client, inform them of that decision, whatever that decision is. I'm not quite sure, but we would ultimately then go through the relevant process to ensure that we're moving out all of those assets back to your relevant wallets. The best thing or the greatest thing about everything that we do here at Calvin Brown is that every single client's assets are accounted for on a one-for-one basis. So if something was to happen to this business, rest assured that client assets are safe. We have the exact dollar value of what you're holding with us in that asset. And so we would process those withdrawals. They would go to your relevant wallets that you'd have associated with us. But that's really how it would all work. It would be no different to, just the standard process of you withdrawing. Obviously, because you have a broker, you have a support team, you have a direct line of communication. So that broker would reach out on behalf of the business. They would inform you of what's occurred, and then they would, tell you what the next steps are in terms of how we would then withdraw those assets back to your possession. So yeah, that's how it would work. I don't think, nothing's going to happen to us. We're going to continue to operate. We have done so since 2016, and we look forward to continuing to operate for the next, 20 plus years.
It says here, Gunner has a question. When will you guys have an app from Caleb and Brown?
That is a very good question, and I feel like I might have to bite my tongue a little bit. All I would say is that it's very, very soon going to go live. I can probably say that the app's been through a whole round of testing. It's actually just recently been approved by the iOS App Store. So I would say within the next, at latest the next couple of months, we should see it go live, and we'll make sure everyone in the crypto Hulk community is aware of that. But it'll give you that optionality to make trades and do everything that you normally do, whether that's trading with us, whether that's contacting your broker through a mobile application. So I can't give you an exact date, and I feel like our product team will probably kill me if I try to do that. But rest assured, it's coming out here very soon.
Okay. Okay. Vadim. The first name is Vadim. Vadim. Any plans to find a way to onboard Canadians?
Yeah, so Vadim, I announced this maybe 3 shows ago now, but happy to sort of provide a bit of a refresher on this video call. Unfortunately, we made a bit of a difficult decision to exit the Canadian market. That decision was made probably just under 2 months ago, purely just from a cost perspective for us to operate there. We found that the banking rails were really difficult to work with. We found that we had a lot of Canadian clients that were finding issues on ramping with us just due to the banking system over there. We also just found it was quite difficult for us to operationally work there and still provide the top tier personalized service that we offer. So that's a more recent decision to exit that market. We're looking to focus more of our attention on our biggest markets, which are really the US, Australia, and Europe. So unfortunately, at this stage, we are no longer accepting new Canadian clients. I'm not going to say that's a final decision. We're obviously quite upset that we can't now continue to work with Canadian clients, and we will potentially explore entering the market again at a later time. But unfortunately, at this stage, we aren't accepting any new Canadian clients, and probably not for the foreseeable future.
Thanks for that. Somebody has a question. Ian Griffin. ENS in Ireland, Revolut has a crypto app where you can buy and sell crypto and other stocks, but they report it profits to the government for people to pay tax on it. Does Caleb and Brown follow the same steps?
No, so we don't report your profits to the IRS. That's up to you to do as your individual investor sort of requirements. So we as a business don't report to the IRS. It's on your behalf to do so through your tax accountant or whoever else it may be. That scenario may be a little different in Australia. We work with the Australian Taxation Office, the ATO here. I don't think we directly report holdings and profits, but we certainly have reporting obligations with them as an Australian business. But at this stage, we don't report anything to the IRS. That's up to you in your individual capacity.
Okay, Linda McKinney has a question. Thanks for that donation. I've purchased crypto from Caleb and Brown this week. She's a new client. I need to move my crypto from Uphold and Coinbase. Oh, yeah, I need to move it off Coinbase, that's for sure. No comment. Is there a minimum amount that you have to have in order to transfer?
Great question. The answer is no. So when it comes to minimums, it's more relevant to the trade. So if you wanted to trade with us, there's that 500 USD minimum that I mentioned before. But in terms of just transferring assets over from Uphold, Coinbase, whatever other exchanges or wallets you may hold them on, there's no limit. So if you've only got, let's just say, $50 on Uphold and you want to move those assets to Caleb and Brown, you can do so. There'll be no charge on our end, and you can do as little or as large as you'd like. So no minimum requirements there. If you aren't quite sure how to do that process, that's where you can reach out to your broker and they can assist you. But yeah, no minimums. You're free to move your assets where you please.
Okay, so a question would be, I'm making up a question. So I have crypto on a couple different exchanges. If I transfer it all to Caleb Brown, how much you guys going to charge me?
$0.
$0. Okay, so my crypto, I can transfer all this stuff over to Caleb Brown. Then I got institutional custody. And let's say I keep it there a day, a week, a month. And then I'm just, for some stupid reason, I transfer it all off to my wallet. How much do I get charged?
$0.
Okay, did you guys hear that? So that answers your question. You can move all your crypto there. You've got custody, like 1,800 global banks and institutions. They will protect your crypto for free without charging you. And then if for some crazy reason, way down the line, you don't want to have Caleb Brown, you'd rather get your stuff hacked, then you can transfer it off, take a risk, and they still won't charge you. So what I'm looking at, it's kind of like a no-brainer. Why not? That would be a smart move, okay? Let me look for the next
Yeah,
question.
and we've got a lot of clients that do that, that will trade with us, but then hold their assets on their own hardware wallet, for example. We usually recommend for a lot of our clients, if they're confident in doing so, having that diversity in custody options. So maybe you hold a significant portion with Calvin Brown, but then you maybe hold another portion on your own hardware wallet. that's really up to you and whether you're confident in using one. Now, we would say that yes, our custody is free of charge. We would hope that given the top tier white glove service that we provide, that when it comes time to actually trade or exit the market, that you would do so with us. So we don't we don't usually encourage people to use our custody, move their assets off their platform, do a trade elsewhere, and then move it back. Often at times that's not exactly what the service is for. But certainly if you want to leverage our cold storage solution for the time being and you're not ready to make a trade yet, then yeah, that's fine. Transfer your assets over to us, leverage our institutional grade custody solution, and speak to your broker about whatever it is relevant to your portfolio.
Chris Sharp, thank you very much for that tax-free donation. Hulk, you're awesome, and thank you for the show. Jim, I wanted to know how great of a job Andrew does for me. Also, the customer service is second to none. Companies around the globe should take Caleb and Brown classes on how to treat customers. A++ experience, Jim.
That's one of the best comments I think we've had so far. So, yeah, for those that don't know, Andrew's probably one of the more senior brokers we have here at Calvin Brown. He's actually going to be our main broker to lead our efforts within the US. So I'm not sure if he's actually informed you of that, but he'll be moving to the US probably within the next few months. He'll be setting up our first office presence there. So he's an integral part of everything we do within the business. And I would say one of the more knowledgeable people I know, not only about crypto, but he comes from a traditional finance background. So he's great at providing that perspective on what's actually happening in the traditional finance world and how that impacts crypto. Something that I definitely lean on him to learn more about. So great to hear. And he's one of the many great brokers we have that work here, and or they're all really super knowledgeable about crypto. So you're in good hands if you work with us here at Calvin Brown.
Okay. How many minutes has this been so far?
That's a good question. I think we've been going for probably about 40-ish minutes, maybe a bit
Okay.
less.
Okay, I see.
But yeah, I'm happy to stick around and answer more questions if people have got them. Yeah, fire away if you've got questions that you want to learn about or know about Calvin Brown or anything else for that matter.
Okay, so everybody, I get questions throughout the week. So here's your chance. Some of these people want to ask me a question and I don't know it. Crypto She-Hulk says 41 minutes. Okay. Let me look through here for questions. Bixby remote. Ian Griffin, what you might have to do, YT shuts down my channel and some people can't leave donations. Set up another YT account, use a different person's name, like your friend, and use your friend's credit card and a different email. Unfortunately, this YT is notorious for hating onto my channel. So, especially when I get donations like this, they get really upset. Robert Driscoll, is the future, wait, in the future, we will be dealing with TY, the US office, with, I don't understand his question. Robert Driscoll, please ask that again. In the future, will we be dealing with capital T, lowercase y, the US office? I don't even know what that is. So I'm going to go to the next question. D'Angelo Tejada. I hate paying wire transfer fees, but I also want to be fair to Caleb Brown. Can I buy a stablecoin like USD Circle and transfer it to Caleb Brown and then use the USDC at Caleb Brown to buy what I really want?
Yeah, definitely. So again, it's one of those frustrating things with banks, right? That if they're charging you disproportionate wire fees or even any fee to transfer your assets over, and you don't want to pay that wire fee, that's totally fine. If there's other ways that you can on ramp, so if you can use, I don't know, let's just say Coinbase to purchase or move your USDT or USDC there, you can then transfer that to Calvin Brown and then you can make the trade that way. That's totally fine. Ultimately, everything that we do is to make sure that you're getting the best experience possible. So if it means that, look, I want to work with you guys and on ramp, but because my bank is charging me hefty rates to do a bank wire transfer, then that's totally fine. If there's a better way to on ramp and then you can come and move those assets over to us and use our services that way. We want to do what's best for you as the client. So that's probably one way to do it. And I'd say if your bank is charging you wire bank transfer fees, then maybe that's the best way to do it. So that's totally fine, and that's something that our brokers would encourage you to do if you're looking to save on costs.
So brand new people, what we got going on is this. Banks don't want you to deal with certain kinds of exchanges or brokers or whatever. It's not Caleb and Brown charging you money, it's the banks, okay? So I got
Correct.
Wells Fargo. If I want to send money to Caleb and Brown, they make it really impossible. Certain places, certain banks and stuff. So, or maybe there's banks and they yeah, so it's just kind of like that. So if you want to go to some place, get your crypto and then send it to Caleb Brown. Like I said earlier, they accept it for free, and then you can go make a trade right there. My bank, here's my story. I went to Wells Fargo. It took me like 2 weeks and calling Wells Fargo on the phone, dealing with their support, and then I had to go into the bank and then go into the bank a second time just to initially send money to Caleb Brown. That's my story. I had to go in and said, I'm going to stand right here and you're going to send this money. I had to literally do that. I paid them twice to send the money. So they claim when I first paid the money, oh, it got rejected. But I still had to pay the transfer fee of like $50 or something like that. Then I went and did it again, but I stood in the bank and said, I'm not leaving until this transaction goes through. And if there's a problem, we're going to call up Caleb and Brown. You're going to talk to them. Then I also said something like this. Then what I'm going to do is file a complaint with like the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency or maybe the Inspector General. And maybe they can come down here and try to figure out why Wells Fargo's money system is not going to Caleb and Brown. Maybe we can figure that out with the Inspector General of the United States. Then I'll tell you what, hot damn, that transmission went right through to Caleb and Brown after that. It was very interesting.
Yeah. That's a true story. I remember we had a call about it. All I'll say about our interactions with banks is, look, a lot of the issues that if we face and our clients face is exactly in that scenario when you're trying to on-ramp. I guarantee you when we're saying client funds from us to them, we've never ever had any issues with banks, right? So that just sort of tells you all you need to know when it comes to working with them. But yeah, unfortunately, there is, as I mentioned at the start, still an inherent mistrust when it comes to crypto organizations from the banks. Look, in some ways, I respect it and understand it because there have been a lot of grift artists, there have been a lot of bad actors when it comes to crypto. But ultimately, it's your funds at the end of the day. You should be able to have the flexibility to move them and invest them where you'd like. So again, that's always a scenario where if you're having an issue, please call your broker because they've often, if you're having this issue, it means that we've faced or a client's faced this before, and they can provide you with the relevant assistance in terms of how to speak to your bank about it. But ultimately, when it comes to off-ramping and moving those US dollars back to that bank, we've almost never had any issues from the banks receiving money from us. So it's just the way it is, unfortunately. But often you'll find that those transfers should go through pretty seamlessly, both on-ramping and off-ramping.
Okay, Robert Driscoll is back. He says, in the future, will we be interacting with the new U.S. office?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So right now as a business, we have both an Australian LLC and a US, it's in Australia, it's Australia Pty Ltd. That's like our business sort of terminology. We also have a Calvin Brown LLC account. So as an American client, once the US office is up and running, it really will depend on your preference as a client, whether you want to work with someone within the US office or the Australian one. Again, more details about how that would actually work will become more public once the office is actually set up. But ultimately as well, if you already have a broker, you have a great relationship with him and it works for you guys, you'll continue to have that broker, regardless of whether they're in the US or in the Australian entity. The exact same operations, the way that we do everything here will stay exactly the same. The only difference being that, look, if you're based in the US and you actually want to meet your broker face-to-face, there's more of a likelihood you'll be able to do that because we'll have more of our brokers that are actually living within the US. So everything in terms of how we operate will stay the same. But more details will come out about this once we actually go public with this. I probably really shouldn't even be discussing most of this, but we know that a lot of our clients, but also people that want to be clients but want to see a US office presence ask us about this all the time. So please know it's in our plans. But again, until you see something official from our Twitter and emails and things of that nature, at this stage it is just still nothing's confirmed yet. So we'll provide all those details when we're ready to release them.
Okay, Scrim de la Creme. Jim, once Caleb Brown is established in the USA, will USA clients have the option to leave crypto in Australia, or will we automatically be forced to hold it in the USA? Will Caleb Brown USA clients' funds, be reported to the IRS?
So in terms of the custody side, it's regardless, right? Because it's held in cold storage. So we work with 5 blocks. They have a whole range of centers all around the world where those assets are essentially stored, but everything's offline. So it's not like your assets currently are sitting physically somewhere in Australia. Everything's obviously on the blockchain, and everything's offline in cold storage. So in terms of the custody side, things won't really change too much. It may just be that your assets are held under the Caleb and Brown LLC entity as opposed to the entity, the Australian one. But again, in terms of your custody of assets, that won't change. In terms of the reporting to the IRS, I mentioned before that we don't currently do this. I can't speak to whether that will change in the future, unfortunately. That's probably more of a legal question and compliance question once we actually open up our office there. I'd imagine we probably wouldn't as well. But again, I don't quote me on that. I'll need to get confirmation. But again, all of that will come through once we've actually announced our US office presence. Everything from custody, from how you interact with your broker, to reporting obligations on us as a business, that will be all made clear once we're officially opened up in the US.
Next question is from Yashua is King. If the Australian government asked Caleb Brown to hold all transactions and deposits, do you think it's possible, and what will the outcome be? Sin ceases are under Albo government.
So the first part of that, I see absolutely zero scenario where the government would tell us to stop effectively operating as a business. We're a legitimate business here in Australia. We pay our taxes, like we do everything by the book. So there would be no scenario where the government would turn around and say, "Hey, Calvin Brown, you can't operate anymore." If in the very, very unlikely scenario that that was ever to happen, the first thing that we would do again as a business is return all of our customer assets back to our clients. There's no way that the government would seize those assets. Those assets would be, owed to, our clients. But again, there's no scenario where our government would tell us to effectively stop operating as a business, especially if we're operating legally, right? So that's no concern on our end, really.
I got a question.
Sure.
Now, in a particular crypto exchange in the United States that just got hacked, if I have an account with them, I'm considered an account holder with them. Would that be correct?
I, I can't speak to sort of Coinbase's operations if they were to be hacked. I know that
No, no,
anyone that
no.
was socially
I'm just
engineered.
asking. I'm just asking. Like, I set up a Coinbase account tomorrow. Am I
Hmm.
considered an account holder or an account owner?
I don't know essentially because every exchange and platform would be different. I imagine you're probably an account holder. I'm honestly not too sure.
So that's more of a legal question. Let me ask
Mm,
Caleb and Brown. Cool. First, let me tell everybody what the difference is. If you have an account at an American exchange or maybe any exchange, more than likely, just like at a bank, an American bank, you're not the account owner, you're the account holder. That's HOLDER. Legally, now I'm not telling you what crypto exchange, well, I'm just saying in general banks in general crypto exchanges in general, you're an account holder. That means you don't own the account, which means the government can come in and do whatever because you don't own it. Okay. Now, at Caleb and Brown, they're a broker. They're not a bank and they're not an exchange. At Caleb Brown, they're a broker. Jim, who owns my account? You guys or me?
So you hold you're the owner of the assets on their account. So they're held on trust on behalf of you, and you have a direct redeemable claim over your assets. So if something was to happen to our business, you'd be able to claim that you'd get those assets back in full proportion as well. So it's not like FTX where it was, one Bitcoin, but one Bitcoin at the time of the hack. It would be whatever one Bitcoin is today. You would get the exact asset back at the exact quantity amount.
Okay, so everybody, here's a difference. Here's another reason why I'm with Caleb and Brown is because at most, I want to say nine, 9 out of 10 times a crypto exchange or a bank, I'm considered an account holder. So if there's a problem and that business is going bankrupt or whatever, by law in America, the banks don't have to give you your stuff back. The exchanges do not have to give you your crypto back. The difference why I'm with Caleb Brown is they're a brokerage and your crypto is in your account because you're the account owner. And Caleb and Brown doesn't own my crypto. They don't lease it. They don't stake it. They don't do anything with it. It's mine. It's locked up in custody with fire blocks. And that's what I was trying to get at is to have him tell you that he doesn't own your account. At Caleb Brown, you own your account. Now, if you go to these crypto exchanges, whatever ones they are, I'm not talking about anybody's specifics. If you go to any of these crypto exchanges, you don't own that account. So if a government or something decides to, oh yeah, then it makes it a lot easier for the banks just to be like, oh, you know what, here's this or here's that. So that's why I'm with Caleb Brown because I'm the owner. And I like that feeling. I don't like somebody else telling me what I'm going to do with my crypto. It's mine. I own it at Caleb Brown. If I don't want them to hold it, I'm taking it back. They can't, all they do is they custody it for me. They work for me. Okay, so I'll end that one. Let me check here for comments. Mark Garcia says, Jim, in the future, can we stake our crypto with you?
Yeah, great question. It's something we're definitely looking into as a business. We just need to do so in a way that's safely proper for our clients. So at this stage, it's a bit of a trade-off in terms of if we're to offer staking, we don't want it to come at the expense of our cold storage solution that we offer for clients. So we're working through how do we provide a yield opportunity in staking for clients, but doing so in a way that ultimately still protects your assets and ensures that the same level of institutional custody that we offer today remains. So the short answer is yes, and I probably get that question all the time. So as you can imagine, it is something that is high demand from our clients. But at this stage, it's just spot trading, but certainly something we're looking to potentially offer as a feature in the future.
Okay. Do you think in the future, JR530 wants to know, what do you think about DeFi? Do you think maybe down the road you might have it, or have you heard anything about it in a meeting or whatever?
Yeah, so DeFi, I mean, the very nature of DeFi is that it's decentralized finance, right? So a lot of it's done on chain. There's no real company on the back end. That's a little different with what we do, right? We're clearly an incorporated business. We have a CEO. We operate very much like the traditional finance way of doing things. So obviously DeFi, it depends on what you mean by DeFi, right? A lot of people view DeFi as a way to earn yield on your assets. So as I mentioned before, that is something that we can do. But again, it wouldn't necessarily be something that's decentralized finance because it's very much through a centralized business like ours. So DeFi capabilities are certainly and features for certain assets we'd be exploring. I'm a big proponent of DeFi in general. So, I use Lido to stake some ETH. I'm a big fan of Aave and all the features and product they provide for clients there as well. But again, these are decentralized businesses in a sense. They're not even incorporated a lot of the time. So it is very different in terms of how the operations work. One's run by code, one's run by business. So that ultimately, in terms of the DeFi components of staking, as an example, that's potentially a feature that we'll offer in the future.
Okay, so you guys, it's like this. Caleb and Brown is a brokerage and a custody provider. Okay, so what they pride themselves on is keeping your crypto locked up so nobody can take it or lose it or hack it. When you start taking your crypto out of Fireblocks and doing stuff with it, now you increase your risk. Now you start moving into not your account. You're just a holder, not an owner. You can't own DeFi. So it kind of goes against the whole premise. And maybe one day Kevin Brown does DeFi or not. I'm not a proponent each way. I don't really care. All I'm talking about is Caleb Brown has your custody locked up. Now, what right now? Now, I'm just talking about right now. I don't want them to do anything with my crypto. I want to lock. That's why I go with them. If I want to stake, I'm going to go to some other place. But guess what? Now you're putting yourself out there to swim with the sharks. I want my crypto locked up in a safe called Fireblocks that 1,800 banks use. I don't want nobody lending it, leasing it, staking it, because guess what? That's how all these other banks and exchanges go bankrupt. If something happens along the way, because you get out of that Caleb and Brown safe, you get out of that safe and you start doing all this stuff, and then you get wrecked by a Sam Bankman-Fried or something like that at FTX. So, me personally, I right now don't want them doing anything except locking my stuff up, and that's it. I don't want Caleb Brown doing shit with my crypto. Alrighty then, let's take a little looky here. Let me see where we're at. Probably one or two more questions. Let's see here. Crypto She-Hulk says Caleb and Brown equals institutional grade custody. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to do anything else. Okay, now when my crypto is worth $500 a piece or something, and I've got 10 million bucks or whatever. Okay, now I'm interested in just looking around at how to make money. Not right now. Not when there's no rules, no laws. We don't even have crypto laws. Like, I'm not, don't even ask me about staking until XRP is at least $500. Now we're starting to get in that area, but not when XRP is like $2. Not unless you got like 50 million of them or something, then okay, that might be worth it. But all righty. The scammers have shown up. Actually, the bots have shown up. So we'll get that, Jim. Sometimes you get outside scam botters come in and try to do stuff. I'm going to continue with the show and look through questions. Is your Fireblocks? Okay, Mark Reese has a question. I talk about this all the time, so Mark must be new. Is your Fireblock security the same as the Fireblocks used for the banks? Easy question.
Yeah, so I mean, Fireblocks in terms of the solution they provide is applicable to all of their clients. Now, the kind of solution that a bank is using compared to, say, a large crypto institution or a business like ours would be different maybe in their configuration. So Fireblocks has a technical solution that they've developed, and then you can use it configured to the way that you want. So the way that we custody assets for clients on the blockchain is maybe a little different to how a large bank would use their custody solution, right? So there'd be different elements to it, but ultimately it's the exact same business. It's the same product feature and suite. Really how we do things, and we go over the top when it comes to security protocols in place, transaction reporting and maker checks that are done. We have a whole range of security protocols to ensure that on the back end with our operations team, everything is done securely, and that there's almost minimal to no exposure for any of our client assets, right? So that's how we operate. It would still be the exact same business that are using Fireblocks' technology in terms of a bank. They would just have it configured differently to operate in a way that works for them. As you can imagine, how a crypto business operates would be a little different to how traditional finance institution works, but it's the exact same business that is leveraging that solution.
Okay. One last question. I'm going to look through here for one last one, and then we'll wrap it up. And then we'll, what is today? The 15th? 2 weeks from now. 2 weeks from now would put us in Las Vegas, I think.
Yep. Yep. So the next one might be in a month from now, the next show.
Okay. So yeah, everybody, this will be the last show. 2 weeks from now, there's XRP Las Vegas, and we won't be having this show here. And then 2 weeks from then, so it'll be a month from today, roughly, is when we have the next Caleb and Brown show on the Crypto Hulk. Broseph, thanks for that donation. Broseph has a question. Does Caleb and Brown offer personal accounts to us as well as business accounts?
Yeah, great question. So the short answer is yes. You can create an individual account, is what we call it, where you will just be investing in your individual capacity. But let's say you want to invest via a business that you've set up or an LLC. You can actually onboard your LLC with us and then invest through that LLC. So the example that I'd give is I have an individual account with Calvin Brown, which I have my own personal holdings with. But then I also have an LLC set up where I'm investing on behalf of the LLC. Those are two separate accounts, but they're set within the same login. So I would log into my one Calvin Brown account, but I can flicker between my individual account and then my company account. So it gives you the optionality to do that. Let's also say that you have a trust that you've set up. You can invest through that trust. So if I set up a family trust on behalf of my family, I can onboard that with Calvin Brown, and then I can invest on behalf of my family trust if my family wants exposure to crypto as well.
Okay, I think that will be it. Do you have, let me just take a quick little peek here. I think that'll be it. Yeah, that'll be it. So everybody check it out. I'll see y'all tomorrow at 7 o'clock a.m. I've got a great show lined up. I've got 5 articles. There's so much amazing news for tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Pacific time. And I'm going to show you tomorrow morning what institutions, the biggest institutions, everybody, are getting into crypto. And I will show you what either crypto they're going to use or what crypto they're partnered up with and they're currently working with. So either one, I can't tell you everything, but I might say, oh, this bank we know is working with this crypto, but they haven't told us, I don't know everything, but we're going to have a real good idea on what's going on. That'll do it for today. I want to thank Jim for showing up, and that'll conclude. So let me
Thanks for having me on.
click out of this here. And that. Okay, Jim.